and even much worse in the passing game. So I am going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home.
This was a tough game to call, Keith, if only because we've got a couple of bad teams here. The Buccaneers are awful on defense, just awful. And the Vikings, since the first game Teddy Bridgewater played in, haven't been so good on offense either. But that all having been said, the Bucs do have a semblance of an offense. And if the Vikings want to win this game, they better start throwing the football, because right now all teams are challenging Teddy Bridgewater to beat them by the pass. And that's not good, because then they can key up on their running backs. In any case, if you've got any Viking, the Viking I like the best is going to be Jerick McKinnon. The Buccaneers are giving up the 6th most fantasy points to the position, so you can look at Jerick as a solid RB2. And I mean, if you have a flex position and that's how you were using him, he should be great this week. The Vikings could do something in the passing game, because the Bucs are giving up the 2nd most fantasy points to quarterbacks as well as the most to wide receivers. But it's just really hard to say where the football's going to go and who's going to produce it. Is it going to be Greg Jennings? Is it going to be Cordero Patterson? Is it going to be Jarius Wright? Your guess is as good as mine. I suppose you could fit any of those guys in as wide receiver 3s or certainly as flexes. But, from an analytical perspective, it's a little tougher to figure out for the Bucs. I love Doug Martin in this game. He's an RB1 or an RB2. The Vikings are giving up the 7th most fantasy points to the position, and he should. If he does not have a good game this week, I think all could be lost with Doug Martin. In terms of Vincent Jackson, Mike Evans, I like them as wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 respectively, and that's only because they are productive. The fantasy points do not necessarily come in their favor, but these are 2 productive wide receivers, and I think if you have them, you're probably going to play them. So I'd like to end this, Keith, with a question. ¿Quién es más fuerte?
I'm sorry,
Buccaneers.
What was that? I'm gonna need clarification on that.
I believe it's who's the stronger of the 2 teams, and my answer to that is Buccaneers.
What I thought. I took 4 semesters of college Spanish, and it's boiled down to one $10,000 sentence. Que lástima, hay 2 chicas en la cocina. What a pity, there are 2 girls in the kitchen. That is what I remember. So, moving on, the Seattle Seahawks at the Carolina Panthers. The Seahawks, guess what? They're not as lights out as everyone thought they were. Even though their defense is ranked 8th in yards, they are 19th in scoring defense. That's just that's not Super Bowl winning stuff. And there's all kinds of crap coming out of Seattle. All the stories about Percy Harvin are starting to surface. And then there was a comment that I saw that people are now that these fellow Seahawks are now criticizing Russell Wilson because he's not quote unquote black enough. Really, I'm not even going to talk about that. It's just stupid. These clouds of crap come across. They seem to surround teams that have something going on in the background, and it's up to them to get it all under control. Switch over to the other side of the field. The Carolina Panthers, up and down. They look really good. Cam Newton looks really good. And then they go and they tie the Bengals. They lose last week in a stinker at Green Bay. You just don't know which version is going to come up. And I just don't like the Panthers. They're banged up in the run game. Calvin Benjamin is, has been a nice story, but is he enough? For the Seahawks are still a pretty good defense, and even though the West Coast to East Coast thing, and usually I stay with the East Coast. Last year the Seahawks went to Carolina. I picked Carolina, and the Seahawks won. I'm going to do the same this time. Seattle wins, or I'm going to do the opposite and pick Seattle this time.
The Panthers defense is just bad. It's just a bad defense. Last year they were number 3 in points allowed. This year they're 29th. 29th, almost 30 points per game they're giving up. In the rushing attack, they're giving up close to 140 yards. In total, they're top 5, giving up close to 400 yards. And they're also giving up the most total TDs at 24. This is a different Panthers team, and it's a team that the Seahawks should be licking their chops at to play, because they have been struggling these past 3 weeks, and they need sort of a get-right game. This should be it. It's the kind of game that Russell Wilson is an automatic start Marshawn Lynch should go big and could very well be the fantasy football player of the week. You got to like Doug Baldwin now that Percy Harvin's gone, especially after he put up a 100-plus yard performance last week. And this Seahawks defense better get it back on track, because this is a team that has given up the points to opposing defenses. So Seahawks, get it together. For the Panthers, I think you can play Cam Newton as a low QB1 this week. Jonathan Stewart is a flex, not a very good one, but a flex, because, look, if you need the help and he's out there, go get him and start him. Kelvin Benjamin, because he's a born natural, and Greg Olsen, because in the past 3 weeks, Seahawks have struggled, allowing the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks and the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends. In the end, the Seahawks are going to win this bad boy, and the Panthers, boy, it's amazing to see how far they've fallen since last season.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Kind of sad. But
I didn't mean to be depressing on that, but really.
Well, that's when you're trying to come up with a theme for the Carolina Panthers season video yearbook. It would just be sad. The 2014 Carolina Panthers. All right, so the Baltimore...
They should actually get that Depeche Mode song from you that you played the other night.
Oh, wrong, yeah. The lyrics are perfect. I was born at the wrong time in the wrong place.
Right.
It's so bad.
That's right.
So bad. The Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals gone into a little bit of a disappearing act. They are on the proverbial milk carton after their bye week. They have not seemed to remember how to play football. At one time, we were talking about the Bengals being the best team in the league. Those days are long gone. The Ravens, on the other hand, are a team that never seems to warrant serious consideration until they go out and just start beating people. Now they sit at 5-2. They're 2-1 on the road. It's a division matchup against a Bengals team that has stumbled and fumbled and grumbled and bumbled. This is not the game where they get their mojo back. I'm picking the Ravens.
Yeah, it's hard not to pick the Ravens in this game. I mean, there's really two things going on. The first is what you've pointed out, which is the Bengals pretty much falling apart. I was shocked when I saw this. They went in 3 weeks. They went from the number 2 defense against quarterbacks to the number 15 against quarterbacks. I just couldn't believe that. They're getting killed by tight ends. They're giving up the most fantasy points the past 2 weeks and have otherwise this season struggled against it. And it's important because that's where you could see the scoring going. On the other hand, the Ravens, they seem to be getting better each and every week. Their offense is getting a little bit better. Their defense is certainly getting a little bit better. I like Joe Flacco this week as he's an option if you have, let's say, Matt Ryan. If you had Joe Flacco, Matt Ryan, you're playing Joe Flacco this week. I like Steve Smith because he's just been Steve Smith this year. It's great to see, even though he's getting on in age a little bit or towards the end of his career, he's still playing at a high level, and I think you got to play him if you have him. Torrey Smith is a wide receiver 3 option, and one of the guys that if you have him on your team as a tight end, God bless you, it's Owen Daniels. A lot of people poo-hooed him when Dennis Pitta went down to injury. Didn't think they'd see much from him, but you do see him get productive, especially in the right matchup, and this would be one of those given how poorly the Bengals defend that position. For the Bengals, man, it's really hard to find somebody to play. You have to play Mohamed Sanu because he's the only decent wide receiver they have, and you sit there and you go, he'll get you 100 yards. That's what should happen. Gio Bernard's a tough play. I have him as an RB2 this week. I couldn't put him up as an RB1. I don't think there's that upside that sometimes you get from putting in a really good running back against a really good defense. So you'll probably play him if you have him, but he's not going to be your top dog this week. And, the Bengals defense, I think this is a week you got to consider benching them and go with your second choice defense. Certainly, if your second choice is the Dolphins, you're going to play them this week. Keith, I think the Ravens ravage the Bengals this week. Ravens win.
A Ravens ravage. Wow. Okay, the Miami Dolphins travel to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Dolphins flying high after strolling into Chicago and really just kind of, taking them back behind the woodshed and reminding them just how dysfunctional they really are. The Jacksonville Jaguars got their first win of the season, 24-6 off the schneid against Cleveland, a team that previously had been playing some pretty good ball. So what does this mean for Jacksonville? Well, I just don't think it means anything this week. Miami is the better team. They've proven that if they are capable of game planning and keeping teams off kilter. With a rookie quarterback in Blake Bortles, the Dolphins' defense could present enough of a problem. I'm going to pick the Dolphins.
I thought it was great that the Jags got their first win last week. And I thought it was great because they were able to combine some good defensive play with a strong running game. But now it's reality check time. You look at the Dolphins, and here's a team that's finally getting healthy, all at the right time and on the defensive side of the ball. And the Jaguars, including their defense, is still that bad. For the Dolphins, I love Ryan Tannehill this week. I don't think he's like, if you had Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't bench Aaron Rodgers to play Ryan Tannehill. But again, if you have Matt Ryan, I think Ryan Tannehill is the right guy to get in the game. Lamar Miller should have an outstanding week. Mike Wallace, get him active. Even Charles Clay, you can look at him as a low tight end if you absolutely need the help. And the Dolphins defense should be the number one defense being played this week against the Jaguars. For the Jaguars, if they're going to give Denard Robinson another 20 carries, he's an RB2. You treat him like an RB2, you play him like an RB2, and then Cecil Shorts is the proverbial wide receiver 3. These Jags can't swim. Dolphins win.
Oh my God, this is fantastic. This is really.
Is it that bad?
No, it's these Jags can't swim. I didn't know any Jaguars could swim, but okay, we'll go with that one. I'm sure there are some Jaguars that are capable of being trained to swim somewhere in the world. Wow. Okay, the Chicago Bears, licking their wounds, travel to the New England Patriots, an environment that is not going to give a damn whether or not they have confidence problems. I haven't seen more dysfunction talked about than since the Viagra commercial. It's bad in Chicago right now, and the problem is that there's too much talent on this team for a 3-4 record. Too much talent on this offense to go out and not have anybody look like they know what the heck is going on. When Matt Forte, for as talented as he is, when he's your top targeted receiver on the season, you have problems with your offense. And then they travel to the Patriots, who have been on a roll since they got shellacked by the Kansas City Chiefs, 41-14. Even though they had to squeak it out against the Jets and rely on a blocked field goal, a win is a win, and they are 3-0 since that game. They have all of the momentum. They are at home, where they typically play pretty well. And even though the Bears are playing phenomenal on the road this year, I don't think they do it this week. I think it's one more week where we're scratching our heads wondering what the heck is going on with that team, and I'm going to pick the Patriots.
Bears, as you pointed out, they're coming off a devastating loss to the Dolphins, and it may have even divided them and scarred them for the rest of the season. But there's good news in all this, which is they're not playing at home. They're 3-1 on the road. That does count for something, and I think they're going to be playing up to the Patriots, even though they may not win the game. Patriots are riding a 3-game win streak, and they've got everything going in their favor, especially their confidence, and that's something that's a little bit too bold to get over on. In any case, I like a bunch of players in this game. Love Matt Forte. Love Alshon Jeffrey, Martellus Bennett. Brandon Marshall is still a good play, even though Darrelle Revis will be all over him. I think you throw the football in his direction, and he will catch the ball outside of Darrelle Revis' hands. That all having been said, I'm not big on Jay Cutler because of the risk and the concern that he implodes like he did last week. For the Patriots, start them all. Tom Brady, Shane Vereen, Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski. You start the Patriots defense for sure because of Jay Cutler. That's all that you have to say about that. And then Brandon LaFell, you can consider him as a low-end wide receiver 3 or flex play because he can help sometimes. The truth be told, it's hunting season on the Chicago Bears. Patriots win.
All right, we're 7 games down. We got 6 more to go. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll blow through the rest. We got the Bills, Philadelphia, Oakland, Indianapolis, Green Bay, and Washington road games to dissect. You're listening to thefantasygreek.com's Week 8 starts and sits in 60 minutes on LateNightSportsRadio.com.